Hello everyone and welcome to Semi Homesteading with Abby. Thank you all so much for tuning into today's video. Today we're taking a very large step, it feels like a large step, in our homesteading journey because I got this pasta stand mixer attachment. So we are going to make lasagna with completely homemade, from scratch, lasagna noodles. I could not be more excited about this. I've wanted to make my own noodles for quite some time, but it always seemed a little bit intimidating, but we're gonna conquer that today. So I found a great lasagna recipe online and we are going to make hopefully some great homemade lasagna. Now my husband doesn't love a ton of cheese, so I tried to find a very meat heavy recipe. I will link that in the description below, but it's just from allrecipes.com. And the other thing about this is I'm actually gonna make 2 lasagnas because this lasagna making effort is kind of twofold. First of all, my brother and sister-in-law are coming over tonight for dinner, so I thought this would be a great dinner for them. But also, I am now like 35 and a half weeks pregnant, so I want to start prepping some freezer meals. So I'd like to make 2 lasagnas and freeze one of them to save for once the baby's born and I don't have to cook as much. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe to my channel. I am learning as many homesteading and homemaking skills as I possibly can. So if you're an amateur homesteader, follow along and we can all learn together. And if you're an experienced homesteader, follow along so you can give me tips because I'm gonna need them. Let's start making some lasagna. So the first thing that we're gonna do, according to the recipe, is to make the meat mixture and we're gonna let it simmer for a long time. It's like an hour and a half simmer time. So I gotta get out my big Dutch oven to start cooking that up. I'm hoping that this is big enough. Since I'm doubling the recipe, there's like 4 pounds of meat going in here and lots of tomatoes and stuff. So I guess I'm just gonna cross my fingers that this is big enough. I might have to transfer it into another bigger pot that's not a Dutch oven. The Dutch oven is preferable though, so I'm just gonna start with this. So we're going to cook the sausage, ground beef, onion, and garlic in the Dutch oven over medium heat. So that means I need to cut up 1 cup of onion. It says I need it minced, which is honestly kind of tough by hand. So I'll try to get it as small as I can, but I don't know. That seems a little bit tough. I feel like I need to take a knife works class or something. I know at Sur La Table, they do some of those like technical classes. I've done some cooking classes there before, but it's always been like how to make certain foods, not any sort of skills class. I actually did take a lasagna making class there one time and the lasagna was great. It was very meat heavy and not as much cheese heavy. So I think my husband would have liked that recipe. And that's kind of what I tried to base this recipe off of. There's still a decent amount of cheese in this recipe, but I might just cut it down if I feel like it would be more than what my husband would like. I kind of want one of those choppers that you just like keep hitting down and it minces everything for you. I feel like it's cheating a little bit, but would be useful in this situation. Let's make sure we have a full cup here. And we do, we have definitely more than a cup. I didn't need to cut all of that, but that's okay. So I'm gonna dump the cup into the Dutch oven. Now we need our meat. So if we're doubling the recipe, it calls for 2 pounds of Italian sausage and 1.5 pounds of ground beef. I don't really want to just save 0.5 pound of ground meat that I don't know what I'm gonna do with. So I'm just gonna put all 4 pounds of meat in there since I'm trying to go meat heavy anyway. Actually, the Italian sausage only is 14 ounces, which is a little bit under 1 pound. So probably works out that I'm gonna compensate a little bit with the beef. Totally just got the wrong thing out of the fridge. That was breakfast sausage, so we don't want to add that. I don't know why I'm so bad at pouring this, like dumping the meat out of the package. I drop it in every time. Okay, it's looking pretty full. Now I just need to add some garlic. It says 4 cloves of crushed garlic. I'm not doing that. I always use minced or garlic powder, so minced will work just fine. So that comes out to 4 teaspoons of garlic. Easy peasy. And we'll put this over medium heat. While that's starting to cook, it's gonna take quite a while for all that meat to get browned. So I'm just gonna start combining everything else so I can just dump that in once it's ready, because the next step is after this is brown, you just kind of combine everything and let it simmer for an hour and a half. Might as well get a head start on combining everything else. We need crushed tomatoes, canned tomato sauce, tomato paste, and water, and then we have a bunch of seasonings and herbs to add. Oh my gosh, the camera just took a hard fall as I was trying to move it. I think it's okay. So we survived. The meat is brown. We have combined all of the tomato sauce and seasonings and things. It's a huge bowl. We're dumping that in. Oh my gosh, pretty much right to the top. I'm gonna stir this around very carefully, and this is going to simmer now for an hour and a half. And we want it to be covered, so that'll also help with the spillage, which is nice. And now we're on to the noodles. Okay, it's about 15 minutes later. Our sauce is still simmering. It's honestly so close to the edge of my pot that I am gonna leave it uncovered for a little bit with a splash guard, just so a tiny bit of the liquid can cook off and make it a little bit more manageable to stir. So we have that going. I've reset my kitchen area so that I'm ready to make the noodles. So here is the new attachment that I have hooked onto the KitchenAid. I had my husband bring this over because it was kind of heavy. So I'm just gonna turn this and kind of push it to the side really quick while we actually make our noodles, which for that, we're gonna need our food processor. Now my food processor is not that big, and I think I'm gonna need to make 2 batches. I have all the ingredients already out, and it's just flour, olive oil, salt, and some eggs. Now I'm really excited because these are my aunt's chicken's eggs, so they are fresh and just adding to the homesteading vibes. You know, since I'm not allowed to have chickens yet, my aunt was kind enough to gift me some of her extra eggs because she has a lot of laying chickens. So we're just gonna make the first batch. I don't want to overflow or overwhelm the food processor, so I'll just do this 2 separate times. But all we're gonna do is add 2 cups of flour and 1 teaspoon of salt. Then in this separate bowl, we add 3 eggs and 1 tablespoon of olive oil. You can tell these egg yolks are always way more orange than the store-bought egg yolks, which just makes me question the store-bought egg yolks and the store-bought chickens. I'm gonna use my Ballerina Farm Danish hook to whisk those together. So to start, we're just gonna pulse the flour and the salt together just a couple times. Now we're gonna add this egg mixture over the flour. Now we're gonna pulse this a couple times to make sure there's no dry flour around, and then we just process it, I think on low, for about a minute until it forms just a ball of dough. It just says if it gets stuck at any time, turn it off and nudge the dough to continue on with the process. It keeps getting stuck and making the little ball-like things that it talks about, but not really then forming a full ball of dough. I took it out and kind of made a ball of dough. I think it's okay if at this point I just take it out and knead it. I'm hoping that's fine because it doesn't seem to be doing exactly what the recipe says. So we'll flour this a little bit and just knead it. I'm supposed to just make this into a ball and just let it rest at room temperature for about 30 minutes. Okay, the meat has been simmering for an hour and a half. I turned that off. It's looking good. I'll show you in a little bit. The 2 balls of dough have been resting for about 40 minutes. We're ready to make the actual noodles, which I'm very, very excited about. So what the recipe says to do now is just to lightly dust a baking sheet with flour. Actually, I think it says generously because you don't want them to stick together. We will take a ball of dough, and it says to divide this into 6ths. So now we're gonna take each little piece and kind of hand flatten it into a rough rectangle, it says. So I have a rectangle, it's about, I don't know, 1/4 of an inch thick, 1/2 an inch thick. And we are ready to actually turn on and roll out our ravioli. I'm gonna turn this on to the thickest setting. So number 1, we're just gonna run this through the thickest setting, and then we'll gradually decrease the number so it gets thinner and thinner and thinner until it's on number 7. This is 8 settings. We want it to end around 7. Oh my gosh, this is so exciting. So I'm just gonna run it through a couple times. Okay, let's move it to setting number 2. Three. I'm gonna skip to setting 5. But now we're finally on 7. Sweet. Oh no! I got like wrinkled. Oh no, oh no. Ugh. Okay, I think it's okay. We'll just have to kind of run it through again. Oh my gosh, it keeps getting wrinkled on this side. Okay, and we have a very thin noodle. So I'm gonna put it down on the baking sheet, flour the noodle, and rub it all over with the flour so it doesn't stick to any of the other noodles. And I'm just gonna do that 11 more times. Somehow my time lapse did not capture rolling out the other 11 noodles. So just know that I did that, and we'll get back to the video. After the noodles were all rolled out, floured, and set aside on a pan, I just had to prep the other ingredients and the other layers of the lasagna for layering. So what I'm doing here is just putting ricotta cheese and 2 eggs. You mix that together, and that's your, quote, ricotta mixture. Got my station set up with the meat sauce, cheese prepped, Parmesan cheese shaved, and I was ready to layer. Okay, we have everything separate. We have our noodles, I don't think you can really see, ricotta mixed with an egg. We got our sauce, Parmesan, I have some mozzarella. So now we're just gonna assemble and put these in some layers and then bake. Let's do it. Well, my brother and sister-in-law ended up coming over early, so they were all hanging out in the kitchen while I was assembling this, so I just put it into a nice time lapse so you didn't have to hear our whole conversations. But I assembled both of the lasagnas. Both were very good. I baked them separately. You could probably do them in the same oven and just rotate them, but I had ample time, so I just baked them separately and let both lasagnas cool. Now, the one thing that I would do differently is instead of adding mozzarella slices to the top, I would add the mozzarella kind of thicker, fresh mozzarella, because these slices kind of got hard and were hard to cut, so that wasn't ideal. But overall, both of them were amazing. I took them out of the oven, let them cool for a while. We ate one lasagna, I sent leftovers home, and then this one, I ended up just letting it cool for about half an hour and wrapping each third, so I cut it into thirds, wrapping each third in tin foil so that we could freeze them for when the baby comes. So this was an absolutely delicious lasagna. I loved how it was meat heavy. It felt like there was enough cheese, but just such good flavors and everything. So I would highly recommend this recipe. I will link it below. I think it will make great freezer meals for when the baby's here and we do not want to cook. So I'm excited to have this later. That is all for today's video. Thank you all so much for watching. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you want to follow along with the rest of my homesteading adventure. And I will see you next week for another video. Bye everyone.